the Dimebucker was that, and but they're too scooped. So
Right.
like eventually like the EMGs have a lot of balls, but they were flat. It's a more flat curve on it.
My pickup guy told me that the chip that's in the EMGs, he like took them apart. It's the same op amp chip that they use in like those like $30 distortion amplifiers, like those little
Wow,
bedroom warriors. It's that
that's
same
horrible.
chip. But it's yeah, I guess it's all about the way it's being used, but really like that's gross. Like
Yeah,
it's the same chip that they use for distortion in all those amps, those practice amps.
yeah. I mean, I like it for like because so much guitar work is done, with playing into a virtual amp on your computer, and any little edge you can get is better. So it actually works better for that than an active. I couldn't imagine. But I did a little thing the other day, and I mean, I'm not really set up as you see. Like this was my studio. Now it's just a baby.
Oh,
Like,
okay. I was wondering. So yeah, so that's why nothing's set up.
I have one guitar in here, and it's like an ES335 ripoff. It's in the other room. I haven't really even played because I was working on doing the Danzig covers, the Danzig Elvis thing, and all
Yeah.
those shows, and then it got canceled, the whole thing. So I was like, I haven't really even been playing that much. Zing
Right.
did it. Zing wanted me to play on something, so I was like, I panicked. I was like, I don't have any Pro Tools hooked up. I got nothing, and he sent me like for his record, and I actually I
So
got
is he doing another Black 29 record?
yeah, and so he's doing a cover of a Holly song, and I play on it, and I just did it really fast. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on it, but that
Word.
was the first time I cracked open Pro Tools in fucking year, man. Like I haven't, I just
It's a weird time, man. I thought we were going to be really busy. I straight up was going into 2020 just like everyone else, being like, oh man, this is going to be the best year of my career. And then it was just like,
I know it's horrible,
I consider
really
this like the
bad.
second coming of Napster. So like right when I hit 18, and like right when I could have given music my everything, right? Right when I got out of high school, and like that's when I would have hopped in a van with all my friends. The record industry just tanked because of Napster. And that sucks so bad, right? So I totally had to deal with that. And now we're in this same thing. It's like right as I was like making major moves in my career in the touring world, it was like, oh, touring's over. Like
Well, it's
so
going to
much.
come back. I mean, when it does come back, I mean, it's going to be crazy because, like, guys like you are going to have a lot of opportunities because, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to drop out. They're going, fuck this. So the ones that remain that are willing to work again are going to be like, wow, I'm going to be turning down gigs left and right because everybody is going to be, the bands that are working are going to come back out and going to want to start, touring again, so
So
that's where
did you hear about Ticketmaster and
doing
requiring
tests. Yeah.
the tests and vaccines? And Stephen Carpenter's response to that was, I'm a flat earther and I don't take vaccines.
Wow.
Dude, I couldn't believe it, man. He's like, what he said was, I'm not dumb enough to think that we're floating around on this spinning ball in outer space.
It's
Bro,
crazy.
what's the matter with people? Too much YouTube. Too much.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sort of looking forward to getting a vaccine, actually, just to take my mind off this bullshit, really. So
Yeah, well, dude, I just had to have a COVID test on Friday. I'm
I
awaiting
had one a
results.
couple weeks ago. Yeah. What did you have to do it for?
So my photographer came down positive with COVID that I just did all these
Oh,
photos
wow.
with, and she's like really sick. Her and all of her friends have it. And I haven't tasted my food in a week.
Oh my God. Did you get it positive or
I don't know.
negative?
I'll find out either today or tomorrow. In the next few days. But I mean,
How
I
sick are they? I mean, what's
I
their
just feel like I have a sinus infection, and like I had like body aches for 2 days, but I also during those having those body aches, I worked 2 14-hour days. So like I wasn't that sick, dude. Like I was like not feeling great and like at work, and work sucked extra because of it, but you know what I mean? Like I'm pretty good with my probiotics. I'm like half a Nazi when it comes to how I eat, and I've been taking vitamin C and vitamin D on the reg. So if you know,
No, you're in good shape. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of people aren't. So, I mean, I know a couple of people that got it that said it was really horrible. Like it was like 2 weeks of agony.
yeah, and
So,
that's where my photographer's at right now. So that's why I was just like, shit, man. Like I had like sweats the other day and some body aches, and then I like felt like I had a sinus infection. So I was like, well, if that's the case, like I probably should get tested. So
yeah, absolutely. So, where did you go? Did you have to wait online at a
it was actually
drive-in?
it was really quick. It was a drive-in at a local pharmacy in my hometown. And
Did you buy it or did you
no,
what
it's
was it?
free. It's just you go to
Really?
riteaid.com and then you just pull in the parking lot. Like you just sign up for the test, pull in the parking lot. They hand you, with like those little those T-Rex hands that where short people could grab shit from the shelf and shit.
Right.
Hand you a little basket. You jam this thing in your nose and in each nostril. I took video of myself doing it, and it brought me back to PTSD, like some PTSD moments because I had my nose broken, and when they stuffed my nose, I never forgot what it felt like
Oh, it's horrible, right? Yeah.
when those pieces come out, and like it brought me right back to that. It's like once you've been infiltrated so deep in your nasal cavity, it's like you never forget. It's like you never forget.
Yeah, no, that's a drag. So how long is the wait on those Rite Aids?
Dude, I pulled in and within like I was there at
I mean, for
three.
the results.
Oh, they said 1 to 3 days in the email afterwards, but when I filled out the form, it said 2 to 5 days or something. So like I said, I did it on Friday, so I should know probably by tomorrow.
That's interesting because uh, we have to, if we do go to New York with Cuomo, that you're supposed to take a test. And it's like everyone's like, well, how are you? I mean, you're supposed to get an instant test, and the instant test that I took one was like $150. I didn't pay for it. I had to do like a live in person podcast, and the guy was he's like, he wanted to make sure that I didn't have it, So,
Yeah.
but it was $150 for that.
Yeah, dude, Joe Rogan does it for every single one of his guests.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, he's got it if you're gonna be on there.
Yeah, and the only one person associated with the show even got it. His engineer had it. He was out for like a week, and now he's back. Like no big shit.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
all these people keep getting it because they go out to bars, pal. That's
yeah,
the
no,
problem. Just stop going to bars.
there's none open in California. I mean, like this is the thing that Megan keeps saying, like like they want. Oh, now it's time to hunker down. This never opened here. Like
I
nothing.
know.
It's been closed. Everything's closed here for forever. Like businesses are out. Everybody's out of business. They want this shit. Like I've told people, and no, but Californians don't seem to give a fuck. It's like everyone's out of business, and they don't give a fuck. It's like there's nothing open. There's like
I know. I'm
half the
so
restaurants
happy.
they're gone.
I'm so happy I made the decision to come back.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
No, I
at
mean,
least
not that
doable.
Jersey is that great, like either, but
No, it's not that great, but it's at least livable. It's like
yeah,
everybody's living within restrictions, right? But it's at least livable. And on top of that, we don't have homeless people everywhere.
yeah. I mean, in that area, yeah. I mean, unless you go to Newark or
I go there as least often as possible.
yeah, exactly. But
All
it's
right. So,
crazy.
I really like we can expand on these two questions a little bit, but the main focus is really just to ask a couple of questions about this is going to be a bass specific podcast. So these
Which is
questions
cool.
are
Yeah,
yeah, because there's nothing out there like that, first off. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's really just from that point of view. And usually
I mean, I've done a lot of bass playing, like I played on like all the Danzig records that have come out recently. In the last, I played bass on those.
well, awesome. So oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And then the Prong, like the last Prong record, I played the bass on it. It's like because we do everything in the studio. I mean, Chris Collier, the producer, did like a lot of bass, but like Jason only played on a couple of records, and the other ones I did with Chris, so I've been playing.
Word, yeah. And so, yeah, and I really thought that your approach as being from like a bass player, I really wanted to just figure out if it like affect any of your guitar playing. And again, live, things that people would want to know about live versus studio
Yeah,
aspect of bass, because especially like when I think of you with Danzig, right? I always think about big venues and being there, and yeah, you're playing guitar for that, but like you're there and experiencing what happens, and also, and then stuff like CBGB's, this little shithole, like how, and the first episode was all about how bass evolved over the years, and
that's
how
a
we
good.
were able
Yeah,
to get louder, how we were able to get more precise, how we were able to change tones and sculpt tones, and just that perspective of it, because nobody ever thinks about how to make things sound. I was saying in our first podcast, I was like, in the beginning, I thought a metal zone sounded awesome. And
yeah,
it doesn't, right? Like now I wouldn't touch one,
yeah.
and
I never was much into boxes, so the only when I play bass, and I could recall, I mean, when I was in before Prong, I played bass, and I know what I used back then, like I mean, you can start the question. I don't know when you're starting
yeah,
here, but
yeah. Let's start it up right now. You ready to go?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. Just reading the question. All right. All right, everybody. So here's Tommy Victor from Prong and Danzig here to answer some of our bass questions. First one here, man, is when I was on the road with you, you told me that like at one point all members of Prong were bass players, and that you started playing bass first, and now you seem to play a lot of guitar. And we noticed that, at least I've noticed that most of the time it's guitar players switch to bass out of necessity, but you're a bass player who switched to guitar out of necessity. So I wanted to get into that and see if being a bass player first and then moving to guitar, if that influenced any of your riffage and anything else you had to expand upon on that.
Oh yeah, I mean, concentrating on single notes and playing along with a kick drum with a drummer, you're locked in as a rhythm section. I don't think a lot of guitar players experience it as much as a bass player does. And so when I switched to guitar, I mean, I was still in that framework of playing with the drummer, and just listening to his kick drum and working off his patterns, and vice versa. Like it came from a more percussive mentality, and just strictly rhythm with the guitar. Like I wasn't concerned with solos. I didn't have a chance. I moved right from bass into playing guitar. I mean, I fiddled around with guitar here and there, but I never really learned that much. I mean, so solos, I've been faking solos since I started. I mean, it's just been like, any bullshit I can come up with and make it sound like it's real is when
Play
I
it as
would.
fast as you can and move
Yeah,
around as quick as you can and yank
yeah,
the whammy bar.
yeah, and it's worked, which is crazy, and that's why a lot of times I always make fun of guys that use a wah-wah pedal so much. I'm like, that's just that's copying up for your inefficiencies or whatever. But that's not really that true. But no, I mean that's how Prong started, was like having a bass player fix the guitar, created that sound. Like this whole groove metal thing really came from
Right.
that.
Yeah. You're the riff beast,
Yeah,
right?
it's
You're the
just
riff
riffs.
beast
I mean,
because of it.
I wasn't concentrating. I mean, solos were an afterthought. In fact, when our first demo, there was no solos on it. And then we were like, well, we wanted to be crossover. We just didn't want to be a hardcore band. We wanted to cross into some metal. So after I figured out how to fake solos, we went in and overdubbed some guitar solos on it. So, yeah, in fact, we had 3 bass players, one wanting to form this band. And it was like, we were writing songs, and I was like, who's going to play guitar? And we were going to have 2 basses. This other guy was going to switch. He left. So then we went down to this power trio format. Mike, the original member that we formed the band with, bass player, he goes, I'll play bass, you play guitar. He goes, you look like you're playing pretty well. And it's like, I was like, okay, fine. And the
So
thing is, when you're
what was the first thing that you did? Did you already know like a power chord shape?
yeah,
from
I knew
playing bass?
power chords. That's about it, really. I knew some power chords. the pinch harmonic thing that, you know, I've been noted for, I don't know how that came about. I mean, it may be from something on the bass where I, you know, plucking the strings really hard. And the fact that you're, for years, since I'm 11 years old, playing these heavier strings and then moving to lighter strings, I was like, well, this is easy. I mean, I was like, playing guitar in my mind, it was easy at first because it was like I didn't have to struggle that much. So,
Right, everything was
yeah,
smaller, the
right.
strings were easier to push down.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe that false harmonics, and, you know, I've always used heavier guitar strings than your average guy, but, you know, like that came about by accident. I mean, trying to emulate like some ZZ Top or something, you know. But
Right, if I'm not mistaken, aren't your guitar strings, it's like the highs are a set of 11s and, like,
yeah,
the lows are a set of, like, 10s or something?
it's 56 to 11. So
56. Oh, okay, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, word,
so
yeah, yeah, it's a little
it's
they're beefy, they're definitely
yeah,
beefy.
yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah,
Not on all
56, not
tunings
46.
though. Yeah, not on all tunings. So, but you know, anything detuned, I got to go that low. Otherwise, it's just too much wobble. But back to bass. So, you know, making that transition was it was a cool thing. I mean, you know, it was a lot of fun at first, and now I feel bad. Like I was because I'm so uneducated on guitar, and like I just because we were in the pandemic, and I was like, you know, I've been listening to a lot of classic rock, so I went online, and this guy had figured out the 100 best, what he thought best guitar riffs in rock of all time. And this guy's just going through from Yes to Rush to Zeppelin and just bashing out one after, made a whole medley of 100. I'm like, I can't play any of these fucking songs because I never learned. I never learned how to play guitar really.
Right.
You know, like I learned on the road. I learned like, you know, just whatever, watching, and I never really learned how to play cover songs. You know, it's like playing guitar with Danzig, and a lot of these songs I didn't have anything to do with the original recording is weird too. But you know, it's just making my own music and writing my own stuff. Playing bass was like it was integral to the sound of Prong, and you know,
Yeah,
later on
it
writing
definitely made that
songs
band
too.
heavy, I think.
Yeah, you know, and then I was able to write some of the bass lines and go, you know what, dude, like play this.
Right.
And like guys are like, you know, like, you know, like to snap your fingers, snap your neck. I mean, that's like a bass song, really. I
Yeah, it
mean,
is.
you know
Yep.
what I mean? It's like that bass riff, like that I wrote was really on the bass, but you know, it's so a lot of it was cool with that. That's, I mean, it's a key element to my career. It's like playing bass, and I still really enjoy playing bass. Like I played on the last couple of Danzig records, and you know, it's like it's been a fun ride. But now I feel like, you know, like I'm a really shitty guitar player. So on the other hand, it has its duality to the whole thing, and I almost feel like a shitty bass player because I missed out years of even playing that much, you know. So I
Right,
mean,
right. So
you got to stay on top of.
with that whole travel of your career through bass, like starting off on bass and switching to guitar, now you also started off in small clubs and then you play big venues now with Danzig and all these other bands and Prong and stuff. So what's like one of the biggest differences you notice from a live bass sound? It could be anything from strings to amps, or even just mobility or anything, but from live sound to studio sound, because you do a lot of studio stuff on bass nowadays too. So what's the biggest like thing that you look out for when in changing up a setup from going from live to recording and vice versa?
Well, I mean, we did the cleansing record, the Prong record with Terry Date, who worked on Pantera and Soundgarden, and you know, I learned a lot about guitar sounds, et cetera, from him. And he said to me, I remember, he goes, "Getting a bass sound is the hardest thing to do." He thought, you know, for doing a rock record. It's like, and I was like, really? He was like, yeah, because these guys roll in their SVTs and it just doesn't work on a record. It's not cutting. Yeah, I mean, uh, I don't agree with that entirely with his thing, but we wound up using, like on Snap Your Finger, we used the guitar head. We used the same Marshall 8100 on that to get that growl, that grind that's needed that's almost inaudible on a lot of stuff. The bass that I feel you need that it can't just be all round under there, you
What
know.
year was that?
That was 94.
94.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of now with working on, you know, with virtual instruments and amps and plugins, etc. I mean, we always have the growl track, like with some distorted, even using like, you know, like my favorite guitar plugin is called this thing called Menace. It's like this throwaway app. I use it on my demos, and you know, but we use that like on the bass along with your like some SVT plugin or a live amp if you can. Who's in a studio to set that up anymore? But it's like, you know, there's
Right.
nothing. You got to have that low end and the combination of it. I mean, live too is a different thing. I mean, you know, you want to have that presence, but it depends what kind of music you're playing. But with, you know, with rock, with heavy, with metal, the bass is a tucked roll. Really, it's got to be. It's a little bit underneath everything, and it's you know.
Right.
It's
It's like felt and
one of
not
those
heard all the
what's
time.
that? Say
Felt
that
and
again?
not heard all the time.
Yeah, I mean that's why you have a problem with guitar players that have switched to bass because they're clueless. Really, like, you know, they're like all over the place, and they're only concerned with the amount of notes and that the top part of it and the clarity, but there's no balls to it. So, you know, these guys are, you know, it's hard to find good bass players. I mean, it's like it really is because, you know, when it comes to live, they just don't have a clue on that. It's like, you know, you're talking about strings. I mean, like, you know, like Jason Christopher, I mean, he changed his strings all the time. Like, you know, he
Yep.
felt he needed that brightness and he needed that low end. And, you know, I think that's an important aspect of it, you know, where
I'm
you're,
very much the same way too, where I like to, like, live for bass, I do change my strings a lot. On the Nita Strauss tour, I change my strings almost every night, especially
yeah.
because I sweat a lot, and
Oh, yeah,
bass
yeah.
strings
Dead
just
easy.
die just instantly, if you sweat even a little bit. And I only ever needed to hear that shimmer, so that way I knew where I was, but I always focused on the low end. My tone is always low end, you know, like I run a dual tone. I'll have
Yeah.
one channel that has high end with a little bit of distortion, and that's what I'm listening for. And then the low end, and that's at the sound guy's disposal. You know, bring
Yeah.
that in how you need to fill up the room, as long as I can hear a little bit of click, so that way I know that I'm on time. You know?
Yeah. You need that high end. And well, of course, it depends if you're playing with fingers or, you know, a
Yeah,
pick.
I'm most of the time I'm a pick guy. When we would do
Yeah.
like 18 and stuff by Alice Cooper, I would
Right.
switch down to fingers for the verses to bring it down a little bit, you know, and I would just like hide my pick in my hand, and then in the choruses kick back in with the pick and all that punch.
Yeah, I mean, like I recently got into like it's not anything novel. Everyone does it eventually. It's like, you know, revisiting a lot of the early Sabbath records, you know, with Geezer with the fingers, you know, and just like that whole approach is like a Jack Bruce style, you know, thing going on. And that was like my big experiences. Like, I mean, going to the Garden. I mean, I'm that old. I've seen Sabbath, Ozzy Sabbath at the Garden. And I had pretty good seats a bunch of times. I just remember just Geezer and like this, just the bass you felt and how loud it was. I mean, at the Garden, and you know, Tony, you heard him too, but you know, I mean, those guys had limit. You're talking about gear. I mean, I don't even know what they were using back then. It was just like just power amps and, you know,
Right.
just, you know, Marshalls. They were plugging into, you know, guitar heads for bass, but it always sounded great. I thought. I
S-
don't even know what they were
So what
using
was
back
your
then.
favorite like setup for a bass rig? What's like your, if you could pick out an ideal bass rig, what would it consist of?
You know what I used to like is the like I'm sort of old, like an acoustic 370 head. You
Like
know
the
these.
old ones?
Yes, those were really good. You know, as far as the cabinet goes, I mean, like SVTs are so great. You know, like I really don't. You know, like, but for me, I always like how, you know. Well, you have a graphic on the SVT. I like the acoustics, those old acoustic heads. You know, and you know, maybe having like it's like they used to have this these Serwin Vega cabinets that had like an 18 in it,
Right.
back that you really didn't hear that much of. It was like just a low end thing. So maybe a combination of 12s and 18s or something, where you get that, like that's something that would be cool. It depends
For
what
me,
bass.
like the white whale of the SVTs is that 215 cab that's the same size as the 8x10s. I've always
Yes.
wanted one of them. I've always wanted to have an 8x10 and a 215 cab that were the same size just for that beef. You never
Yeah,
see
that
those
would be
anymore.
cool. I know, but I mean, I'm saying a lot of guys, just like, they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to get the sound going. Bass is a hard thing to get, man. It's like a really hard sound to really do it. Because you're working with limitations, which is cool. Like once you nail that, I mean, it's really great. It's like, you talk about Tony Iommi too, like where go back to guitar a little bit, where he, he had his fingers chopped off, the tips of a couple of fingers. So then those limitations is sort of like my experience. I didn't really know that much. So like sometimes it's a benefit to have like those limitations in
So you're saying that you going from bass to guitar is kind of like having your fingers, the tips of your fingers cut off.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You didn't really,
Right.
I only knew 4 strings before that.
Right,
So
right.
these top 2 ones were like, well, what do I do with these? I was like, I didn't really.
Whittly,
Exactly.
yank.
Yeah. So
Awesome, yeah. So what do you think about things like Dark Glass or all of these plugins nowadays, right? Like, so in the 90s and around the turn of the century, VST plugins were pretty awesome for me because I couldn't afford all these amps, right? And nowadays it feels like that just has taken off, right? And
yeah.
now you use a Kemper for guitar and stuff. Do you ever use it for bass?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't really like it that much for bass that much. Like uh Chris Kyle, who worked on the last couple of Prong records. We did on the Danzig records. We used the Kemper for bass because there's a couple of Ace. It comes with a couple of SVT profiles in there that are fine.
Right.
So that I did all those last Danzig things just with the Kemper, and that's it. We didn't bother with trying to do anything else. We didn't use any plugins, nothing. So
Have you had a chance to mess around with like the dark glass amps or the dark glass pedals or anything?
guys have had it, yeah. Like a couple of buddies of mine had them. Like you got to know what you're doing with it, though. I mean, believe it or not. I mean, some guys when you they have it on, and then if it's off, it's just like there's a different level or something like that. There's always with the boxes with bass, some kind of compression is added into it, and it changes the level a lot. So getting those levels together between the different settings or what have you is I always see as a problem with guys. Just getting it down right.
When I switch from bass to guitar, no matter what the setup, I just have a Dynacomp, an MXR Dynacomp, and an ISP decimator. And I don't care, guitar or bass. I bring those two together and I can play through any amp. Usually after that, for guitar, I have a tube screamer and like after the noise gate. And then for bass, it's same deal, the comp gate, and then I have like an MXR the bass pedal. It's kind of like the Sans amp.
Yeah, that's perfect, man, because that's what I always did before I got into Kemper. And Kemper has that great little noise gate knob in the front. It's just like, which is like, that's a godsend for like thrash metal and stuff, because you don't want to hear anything between when you stop, so that thing's amazing. And you can put
that's the way I feel like the decimator is. It's just a
I
single
love it. I
knob.
use that for years.
It's just a single knob.
I know. I use that forever. The only problem with those things, I use those eternally. And before that, I had a Hush. And one of the old Hushes, like Dimebag. Yeah, that Dimebag was a rack-mounted Hush.
Yep.
Not the Hush 2.
The Super C plus.
No, that one I didn't like.
Oh.
Maybe it was a Super C. It was just a regular white one.
Oh, okay.
And it was just 2 knobs, 2 channels. It was sort of like a decimator. I think the guy that developed that is the guy that developed the decimator, and it was just awesome.
Yeah, dude, I love the simplicity. You don't need
a lot. And then they went to that red one, and they had another one that had more variables, and it never was the same. And then I never liked the Boss gate or anything like that.
No,
so
I always get a.
Yeah, the threshold is weird. there's no attack on them, right? So the release on it. So when the Decimator came out, that was just a godsend. Just what always happened is they broke on me, like where somebody would step on that the
That
AC
one knob.
yeah, whatever,
Oh,
something.
and that, yeah.
I have like 5 of them laying there that just destroyed.
Dude, so one of my singers jumped on one time
Yeah.
drunk at a show, right? And I've been fixing gear. You know this, man. I fix gear. I take out soldering irons to fix shit. And I was so bummed. I was like, dude, you don't understand. I'm like, it's not like I can just like have a quick disconnect cable and like just fix this. I'm like, I have to get in there and solder everything. Well, lo and behold, dude, I took it apart. Everything on that Decimator is a quick connect cable. So if you have one that has a broken 9-volt and one that has a broken knob, you can literally just open it up, disconnect, and reconnect.
Yeah, all right.
And so you can take you don't even need a soldering iron. I couldn't believe that, dude. I'm just saying.
Wow, no, I mean,
they're all quick connect.
I've never been one to open shit up. You know, I'm like, throw it out or whatever. Now it's just laying here, but but I mean, years ago, like the first bass stuff I used, I mean, we had I used a compression, like the old new wave bass. Like even like with Killing Joke, there was always a little bit of a chorus I used, and always a compression on the bass, like a pedal. I think it was the Boss compression.
Right. So you said chorus and that instantly, and you're Mr. New Yorker. So like, what did you think about hearing Peter Steele's bass tone come out of nowhere? Like the way that dude played his bass for me was unlike any other bass player ever, with the chorus,
Oh yeah, I
the
mean,
flanger and the drive.
I mean, like when I first saw Carnivore, they had a different approach. I mean, he was sort of like, rhythm guitar bass player.
Right.
And then, the guitar player, when I saw him, was Mark Piavanetti. He was a kick-ass. The guitars were just for solos, really. I mean, you really didn't even need anything. It's just like Pete could have been there with the drums and him. He handled so much, and he was so loud. So, yeah, I mean, like he was. I really don't know where that comes from, but it's almost like a throwback to like Jack Bruce and the power trio of Cream, where the bass was just so loud and so part of the whole thing, and like Mountain too, like Felix Pappalardi, and these. I know Pete. That's where we come from, the same era of those bands, so that's where it came from, I think.
So who made you want to pick up the bass?
I think it could have been Geezer. It could have been Gene Simmons. I think it was probably Kiss. Like, I mean, it was like, that was that was the easiest shit to learn. Like when I just wanted to get into a band.
Right.
So, I mean, there's tons of guitar players, like even like when I was young, I mean, I was able to like get in a band because, no one wanted to really play bass back then, so back in Queens. So, I just play, like what I did was, I figured out, I think probably Strutter or one of those songs, I was able to figure it out. So, Kiss and Sabbath and Deep Purple and.
So Kiss and Sabbath and stuff, that was like your introduction to playing music on bass?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and
yeah,
all that stuff's loud and punching.
Yeah.
Simple. Some of it's really simple. Some of the Sabbath stuff, some of that was really hard. There's a lot.
I don't know. I couldn't really accomplish that much with the Sabbath stuff. I mean, eventually I learned the finger technique.
I was going to say, did you start off with a pick and then move to fingers?
Yeah. I guess you see in Geezer, like, the whole thing will play, like, this whole thing looked cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was the whole thing, right? So, I think when I saw, California Jam with Sabbath and I saw him, I was like, holy shit, this is the coolest thing I ever saw in my life.
Right. And so do you think that the technology, but like these VST plugins, you think all this stuff has changed the way bass players play nowadays, where, because now everyone's just doing everything digitally, right? Back in the day, my bass players used to want to rumble the room, and that's the way their bass playing, evolved. Now it seems like, since everything's all digital, bass just follows the guitar and the kick drum, and then that's it. And they're not like looking to add this heartbeat to the band that the old bass players used to.
Well, I mean, it's the bass players. Bass playing has changed so much with 5-string basses and 6-string basses and whatever. The down tuning thing is a lot of times, like when Korn came out, the guitars are tuned really low. The high thing was the bass, was like the percussive aspect of things was wound up being slap bass. That was not bass. That was the high end guitar.
It's like
and
playing a snare drum on strings.
Yeah, it was like it was a total reverse psychology. So bassists have been like having to cover all kinds of grounds. Really, it depends what kind of music you're playing. Really, I mean, unfortunately, one thing on a totally different note is that like I was just because this free time and like I've been not really free time, but I would really be able to look at Spotify more and iHeartRadio. And like they have like these like alternative rock charts, and I have no idea who any of these artists are that have billions of plays on Spotify, and there's really no guitar or bass on any of it. It's like I don't know what it is. It's like it's
synth.
Just synth. And
synth in a drum machine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe an acoustic guitar. Like
there you go, maybe acoustic guitar. Yeah, like they have as a novel, like a novelty item in there is like a little guitar thing or something, but it's bizarre. So I mean, I really don't know. I mean, but I think we went through this new wave where it's like, oh, guitar is dead, and like like Kanye West came out and like he said that guitars is a dead instrument and it's bullshit. So we're still in this decade of that. So it's
everything's
tough.
now MIDI controlled, man. Like I think Guitar Hero did it to us. They made people realize that they could play guitar by tapping on plastic.
I know.
What's funny is true. Like in all these years, and it's I don't know if I ever said this to you, but like with things like Guitar Hero 2 and getting kids interested in music, I played an instrument before that thing ever came out, and dude, I knew how to play Mother almost right away. You know what I mean? Like Mother was a huge song, of course. I'm a Jersey boy. I'm a bit Misfits. When Mother was just breaking the charts, of course I learned it. When Guitar Hero came out, I couldn't play it. I literally failed playing Mother. It's on that game. It was the easiest song. It was the easiest song.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. I knew how to really play, so I couldn't do that. But yeah, just I think technology has really changed the game for us. I feel like nowadays the only bass in music is like an 808. Versus,
what is all that? Yeah, I mean, like with trap artists, and I mean, like
it's just a tuned kick drum. It's not even really a bass anymore. It's just a tuned kick drum.
That's what it is.
Yeah. The world's changed a little bit, but like I do love some of these new dark glass products, how they have just turned bass into this instrument that's kind of cool again. I think for years bass was a pretty bland instrument, right? We in our first episode we were talking about how bass went from an upright to then a precision instrument to now these instruments that are so well made that you can literally play 5 million miles an hour on these things, tap them, get all these sounds. You could put synths and chaos pads and everything else you can imagine onto these things, where like Kanye West could be right. A guitar could be dead, but if you take these instruments, or like a guitar or a bass or any analog instrument, you could put these effects on it and make it hip and just use it as your form of a MIDI controller.
What about like animals as leaders? I mean, are those is he a bass player or is he a guitar player?
Not a bass player. In fact, Javier had this meme going around saying, "I'm not a bass player." There's just two dudes with 8 strings and a sick drummer, no bass. But they say no bass, right? But they run backing tracks, and in the backing track, there's synth. That's
I don't know what was going on in there, because I saw them. I'm like, it sounded like it was. I don't know what was going on.
They're 8 strings tuned down to an E, so it's an octave lower than a 6 string. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. On my 8 strings, I have it tuned low E and then drop A for the 7. So from my lowest note on the 8th string all the way up to the 24th fret on the high E, that's 6 octaves of E. Dude, listen, I think an 8 string's too much personally. Out of all these things, like I've played, I got a lot of gigs playing 5 and 6 string bass because I had those, and everybody wanted that extra range and everything. And like when I had my first 6 string bass, dude, I did not know how to play a 6 string bass. I just had it.
I wouldn't know.
It's an extra low string like a 5 and an extra high string, but like I just had it because I got
Oh,
a
it is?
better.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah, and so but I knew so little that that high string's supposed to be tuned to a C to fourths. I tuned it to fifths like it was a guitar. Like I didn't know. I tuned it normal. Um and yeah, I just like stabbed in the dark about it. I really only had it because when I started playing, everyone just started going lower and lower and lower in tuning, and I needed something with low notes. And I just also happened to have something with high notes, you know. But I didn't, dude, I was making it up all along the way too, man. I was making it up all along the way. I had no idea. I went the opposite route of you. I was a guitar player who got a bass early on, but never really dove into it. And I did understand the mechanics of taking the power chord and just simplifying it, you know, down to the one note, and then learning over the years to not just punk rock my way through it, to actually groove with the kick drum. And I've always felt like so many people don't realize, some do, but not everyone, that especially when you're first starting off playing bass, that as a bass player, we are the glue between the guitar and the drums. We're not just like there to mimic one or mimic the other. You got to be the glue. So sometimes you're following the kick drum,
Sometimes,
sometimes you're
yeah.
following the guitar, sometimes both are all together, but sometimes you're somewhere in between. You know, my favorite thing to do on a bass that just always sounds good is like a good, well placed bass slide. Just sliding all the way up that E
Yeah, Gene
string.
Simmons.
Yeah, sometimes like just that one move. Dude, you do that on guitar, it doesn't sound as good, man. But when you're a bass player, you hit that low E and you're like,
Oh, I know. It's
boom.
great. Or the other
Oh,
way around,
yeah. You just you can't beat it. You can't beat it.
Totally. I totally agree.
Hey, well,
Totally.
listen, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your
Thanks,
schedule.
Gene. Thank you,
I know
man.
that you're a new dad now, and I'm sure that
Yeah.
that's got to be so much fun. One of the things we talked about, I just want to tell you, is that and I had a little bit of an epiphany about this when I was talking with my co-host. But when we're kids, when we're babies, and we're in a womb, that's all we hear is bass. We don't hear any of that, the those high ends, and there's been studies about it, and I wonder, like, you know, is that why some of us maybe have such an infatuation with lower frequencies, is because maybe our parents listened to music, but all we ever heard when our ears were developing was the bass,
Yeah.
right? We never heard the high end. So yeah, so we just always we talk about that and how it makes the hip shake, and maybe it's that familiarity of those low frequencies that really just groove with us. But thank you so much for everything,
Thanks,
man.
man.
And I can't wait to
Keep in
see you.
touch.
Hopefully we get to tour again, man. You know,
Yeah, man,
I was really
absolutely.
excited we were gonna do some big stuff.
I know.
So
Yeah, we'll see. Probably.
all right, man. Well, thank you
All right,
so
bud.
much. And
Thanks, bud. Keep in
I hope
touch.
to see you soon again.
Yeah, man.
All
I'll
right.
let you know if we're coming out for Christmas out there.
Yeah, it'd be great to get together with you.
Yeah, brother. All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, bud.
You too, bud.